My name is Nathan. I'm 27 years old, and up until about 6 weeks ago, I actually believed my relationship with my family, messy as it was, could still be saved. You know how it goes. You're the peacekeeper, the one holding everything together, while everyone else slowly chips away at your sense of self, your sanity. Growing up, normal wasn't a word I knew. My mother played favorites openly. My father checked out emotionally long before I even started high school, a ghost in his own home. And my younger sister Melanie? She mastered the art of looking like a fragile princess to the outside world, all sparkly filters and curated online moments. But underneath it all, she was a full-time manipulator, always angling, always scheming. Despite all that, I stayed close. Or close enough. I showed up for birthdays, sent thoughtful gifts on holidays, answered their late-night panic calls even when I had an important meeting at dawn. I believed in family and sticking by them. That belief led me to stepping back in 2021. Mom called me in a panic. The house, the one she always said meant everything to her, was in danger. Property taxes had piled up, some overdue, others just forgotten through sheer neglect. Melanie was still living there then, supposedly between jobs, adding nothing but stress and bills. The air crackled with tension every time I visited. So I paid. Quietly. Without a lecture, without demanding a single thing in return. I just set up an autopay, a silent lifeline, ensuring the taxes were covered so they wouldn't lose that house. At the time, I told myself it was the responsible thing, the right thing. It wasn't about the money itself. It was about providing a stability they never seemed capable of building for themselves. It was about being the adult they never quite became. But here's the painful truth about giving too much for too long. People stop seeing your kindness as a gift. They start seeing it as something they're owed, a currency they can spend without gratitude. The change started small, almost invisible. The thank you text became rare, then stopped altogether. Assumptions replaced requests. I started noticing little things. My name slowly vanished when they talked about the house. It was always Melanie's house now, even though she hadn't contributed a single dime towards its upkeep. I brushed it off. I made excuses for them. They didn't mean it, I thought. It was just casual talk. Nothing serious. Then, about 2 months ago, I went over to pick up a box of old yearbooks I'd left stored in the attic. Simple, right? Melanie answered the door. She wore this little smirk, smug and cold. "Oh," she said immediately, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Didn't Mom tell you? We're redecorating. There's no space for your junk anymore." I actually laughed. It was so absurd, so blatantly rude. I thought she must be joking. "Okay, funny," I said, trying to keep it light. "But I'll just grab the box and be out in 10 minutes. No fuss." Her smile hardened, turning syrupy and unpleasant. "No," she said flatly. "You're not coming in. This is my home now, and we don't want you hovering around." I froze. The words hit me like a physical blow. My eyes darted past her shoulder into the living room. There was my mother, sitting comfortably on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, casually flipping through a catalog. She didn't stand up. She didn't even look towards the door. A cold dread started seeping into my bones. "I pay the taxes on this place," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Low. I just want my box. That's all." My mother still didn't turn her head. Didn't even blink. "You're making a scene, Nathan," she said, her voice bored, dismissive. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a box." "Then let me get it," I insisted, starting to take a step forward. That's when Melanie moved. She physically blocked the doorway, her body rigid. "Goodbye, Nathan," she spat out, and then she slammed the door right in my face. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. I stood there on the porch, stunned. I couldn't move. Inside, I could hear them, laughing, not even trying to lower their voices. The sound wasn't joyful, it felt cruel, pointed. That was the first time I truly stopped and asked myself, deep in my gut, what was I even doing? Why was I pouring my energy, my money, myself into people who treated me like an inconvenience, like an intruder on their doorstep? I didn't text. I didn't call. For days, I just sat with it. The hurt, the anger, the sheer disbelief. I needed to breathe, to think clearly without the fog of their presence. But then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. The words were stark, brutal on the screen. "Don't come around anymore. This is your sister's home now. We've changed the locks. It felt like a punch to the chest. I literally gasped for air. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a plea for space. It was a decree. A final shutting of doors, both literal and emotional. The ultimate dismissal. And then, like a cruel afterthought, she added, "Hope you understand." Hope I understand? I stared at those words, a bitter laugh escaping me. Oh, I understood. Crystal clear. I understood exactly how they saw me. Not as a son, not as a brother. As a wallet. A backup plan. A convenient resource whose usefulness had officially expired the moment it stopped serving their immediate needs. My kindness had a shelf life, and they decided it was past due. I read the message again, the coldness of it settling deep inside me. Then I typed my reply, my fingers steady now. Got it, I wrote. But you forgot who's been paying property taxes since 2021. Short. Simple. True. Then I opened my laptop. I logged into the county tax portal. My hand didn't shake. I found the autopay setup. One click. Canceled. Just like that. The silence after clicking felt huge. Then I opened my email. I found the original notice from the tax office, saved from years ago when I first took responsibility. The ownership was messy, never formally transferred fully to Melanie. It was still technically in Mom's name. That messy detail suddenly felt like a lifeline. I forwarded that single email to the county tax office with a brief note. Effective immediately, I am no longer responsible for payments on this property. The response came faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, my phone lit up. Not a call. A screenshot from Melanie. No greeting. No fake smiley face this time. Just a picture of an official-looking notice taped to the front door, and beneath it, her stark text, "Why is there an eviction notice on the door?" I didn't reply. My fingers itched, but I held back. Instead, I took a deep, steadying breath. Then I opened my laptop again. This time, I went to a realtor's website. I listed the house. Right then. Right there. But that eviction notice? That was just the first tremor. The real earthquake was coming. Because what I didn't know, sitting there calmly listing their home, was the fantasy world Melanie had built on its foundations. She'd been throwing wild weekly parties, acting like she owned the place outright. She'd even promised several of her friends they could move in with her by summer, offering them rooms in her house. She'd posted a triumphant TikTok video, showing off a fancy new kitchen remodel, a remodel I knew for a fact she hadn't paid a cent for. Meanwhile, Mom had been spinning tales to her church group, telling them Melanie was finally settling down and that I, out of the goodness of my heart, had lovingly signed the house over to her. So, when the for sale sign appeared on that perfect green lawn like a declaration of war, their carefully constructed house of cards began to collapse. Melanie didn't call me calmly. She screamed. Voicemails filled with rage and tears. Texts that came in rapid, chaotic bursts. Messages relayed through bewildered mutual friends. Within 24 hours of the listing going live, my phone was flooded with over a dozen messages from her, swinging wildly like a pendulum out of control. One moment it was pure, desperate pleading. "Nathan, please, can we talk? We can fix this. I know we can. Please." The next, it was vicious accusation. "You're ruining your own mother's life. You narcissist. How could you be so heartless?" Then back to pathetic bargaining. "Think about Mom. Where will she go? This is destroying her." I read them all. I felt the storm of her emotions. But I didn't answer a single one. Not one word. Instead, I forwarded every detail, every frantic message, directly to Brianna, my realtor. She was sharp, efficient, and frankly, seemed energized by the drama. The house, she confirmed, was in a fantastic neighborhood. Property values were soaring. And when she saw the interior photos, her voice crackled with excitement over the phone. "Nathan, if you want this gone fast, I know 5 investors who will offer above asking price before it even officially hits the wider market. This won't take long." The irony was thick. That fancy kitchen remodel Melanie bragged about on TikTok? Turns out it was only half paid for, funded by some guy she'd been seeing. When he saw the house listed for sale, he immediately demanded reimbursement, waiving receipts. Her carefully curated influencer image was crumbling in real time, live for everyone to see. But the deepest cut came 3 days after the listing went live. I was in my quiet apartment, eating leftover takeout, watching a documentary, trying to find some normalcy. Then came the knock. Not loud, but insistent. I opened the door, and there she was. My mother, standing on my doorstep. No call, no warning. She looked wrecked, not her usual cold, polished self. Her hair was messy, escaping its usual neat style. Her makeup was smeared, like she'd been crying but tried to wipe it away. She clutched her purse like it was the only solid thing left in her world. "Nathan," she said, her voice shaky, thin, but still carrying that familiar undercurrent of entitlement. This has gone too far." She didn't ask to come in. She just walked past me, into my space, like she still had the right. I didn't say anything. I just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, waiting. My heart was pounding, but my face felt calm. "I understand you were hurt," she began, her words careful, rehearsed. Her eyes darted around my apartment, not meeting mine. "But selling your sister's home? This isn't how family handles things. We talk. We work it out." I blinked slowly, letting the words hang in the air. Then I asked, my voice quiet but clear, "Her home? Or yours?" She flinched, drawing herself up. "You know what I mean." "No," I said, finally stepping forward, closing the distance slightly. "I really don't. Because when you texted me, when you said, 'Don't come around anymore,' you made it crystal clear that house wasn't my home. You changed the locks. You called it Melanie's. So now, I'm treating it exactly like what you declared it to be. A house. A piece of property. One I've been financially responsible for keeping afloat. Nothing more. Nothing less." She sank onto my couch as if her legs had given out. The weight of reality seemed to crush her. "Do you have any idea what this will do to us?" She whispered, her voice cracking. "Melanie, she has nowhere else to go. She was supposed to start her new job next month. After what?" I cut in, unable to hide the edge in my voice. "After a whole year of finding herself? A year of posting day in the life, reels, and begging for Venmo tips for her creative projects? And let me guess, Mom, you were going to float her until she magically stabilized? Using what, exactly? The money you haven't had in years." That shut her up. She stared at the floor, her shoulders slumped. "Mom," I said, my voice calmer now, though the hurt was a raw ache. "I covered that house for 3 years. I paid the taxes so you wouldn't lose it. Not because I owed it to you. Not because you deserved it more than anyone else. But because I thought you deserved to keep the place you claimed meant so much. And then, you handed it over. You gave it to someone who's never worked a real day in her adult life. And you told me, the one who kept the roof over it, that I wasn't welcome. That I wasn't family there anymore. What did you honestly think would happen? Did you think I'd just keep paying forever, exiled from my own effort?" She looked up at me then. Her eyes were wide, glassy with unshed tears. For a fleeting second, she didn't look like the woman who'd spent my life comparing me unfavorably to Melanie. She didn't look like the architect of this mess. She looked lost, small, like someone who'd just realized the safety net she'd taken for granted wasn't stitched to the ground. It was held up by the very person she'd just pushed away. "I didn't think you'd go this far," she breathed, the words barely audible. "Yeah," I said softly, the weight of years in those 2 words. "Neither did I." Then the bargaining started. "Maybe they'd agree to sign the house over to me formally," she suggested, her voice gaining a shred of hope, "in exchange for just a few more months. Time for Melanie to get settled in her new job. Time for them to figure things out." She talked fast, laying out this fragile plan. I listened. I nodded politely. I told her I'd think about it. But inside, I already knew. I wasn't changing a thing. Because what she didn't know, what Melanie clearly hadn't told her, was that her precious daughter had already tried a desperate, stupid move. Melanie had called the real estate office, pretending to be me, trying to cancel the listing. When the office asked for ID verification, she'd started screaming and hung up. They flagged the attempt immediately and reported it straight back to me. Fraud. Pure and simple. And it got worse. Much worse. Brianna called me later that day, her voice grim. After the eviction notice was posted, someone had trashed the house. Broken cabinet doors in that Instagram-perfect kitchen. Holes punched in the pristine drywall. Even ugly graffiti spray painted on the garage wall. "Enjoy your empty victory." My blood ran cold, then hot. Anger, yes, but also a strange, cold clarity. I filed a police report immediately. My name was still tied to the tax records, giving me standing. Brianna documented the damage meticulously with photos. It only strengthened my position, turning their petty destruction into evidence against them. The sheer audacity of it. It was breathtaking. The kicker? Through it all, they still seemed to believe I might cave. That if they begged just right, or spun the sob story hard enough to mutual friends or online, I'd suddenly relent. Okay, I'd say, let's pretend none of this ever happened. Back to the old routine, the old burden. They underestimated one fundamental, brutal truth. You don't get to exile someone. You don't get to tell them they're no longer family, change the locks on the home they financially sustain, and then act shocked, surprised, when they stop protecting you. Especially when they were the only reason you still had a roof over your head in the first place. So, when Melanie's next text arrived the morning after the vandalism discovery, just a single, stark screenshot of the eviction notice followed by the words, "This is your fault. I hope you're happy." I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel guilt. I felt nothing but a cold, hard certainty. I didn't reply. Because by then, Brianna had already sent the update. The house was under contract. Things moved with dizzying speed after that. Faster than I ever imagined possible. Within 4 days, Brianna presented 3 solid offers, all significantly above the asking price. One investor, clearly unfazed by the drama, even offered to close in under 2 weeks. No inspections, no contingencies. Just a clean, fast sale. It was surreal. Sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my morning coffee, watching emails about the sale of their home, my financial burden, ping into my inbox. This place they branded as their sanctuary, Melanie's Kingdom, was being reduced to numbers on a screen, a checkbox and a transaction. A transaction I controlled completely. I hadn't spoken to Melanie or my mother since Mom's desperate visit. Melanie's text became a frantic, escalating storm. First came the guilt bombs. You're kicking your own mother onto the street. How can you sleep? Then the gaslighting. You always twist things to make us look bad. You've been jealous of Mel since we were kids. And finally, flat out, raw desperation. She even sent a photo of herself standing defiantly outside the front door, arms crossed, trying to look tough, but her eyes were red-rimmed, her posture screaming panic. The caption read, "You're destroying this family over a few $1,000s? Grow up." I read them. I deleted them. I didn't engage. Because it wasn't about the money anymore. Not really. It was about years. Years of being used. Years of being leaned on while being called too serious or no fun behind my back. Years of paying for their messes and getting handed resentment and attitude in return. Years of being the reliable plan B while they built their fantasy lives on the assumption that I'd always stay quiet, always pay up, always be there to clean up. This wasn't revenge for one slammed door or one cruel text. It was the inevitable, painful collapse of a dynamic build on sand. And finally, the ground was shifting under my feet. But just when I thought the chaos had peaked, the universe delivered a twist I never saw coming. And it didn't come from Melanie or my mother. It came from the buyer. It was late afternoon when Brianna called, her voice oddly cheerful. "Hey Nathan, funny thing. That buyer who submitted the best offer? Turns out she's a landlord. Specializes in student housing. She's planning a full conversion, turning the property into 3 separate rental units for students." I blinked, momentarily speechless. Wait, student housing? I managed to echo, "Yep." Brianna confirmed, a hint of amusement in her tone, gutting it completely. I saw the architectural plans she sent over. It's going to look totally different inside. She's not keeping any of the original layout or, well, anything really. Starting fresh. A laugh burst out of me. A real, deep, unexpected laugh, the first genuine one in weeks. It felt strange, liberating. Melanie, my sister who obsessed over every throw pillow, every backsplash tile, who dreamed of airbnbs and home decor blogs, her sacred, Instagram-worthy space was about to be chopped up, transformed into 3 functional, probably IKEA-filled student apartments. Mini fridges, bunk beds, textbooks piled on desks. The sheer, beautiful irony of it was almost poetic. Brianna wasn't finished. "There's more," she said. She asked if you'd be okay with them starting some prep work early. They can't take possession until closing, obviously, but she's hoping you'll sign a waiver so her contractors can get in this week for final measurements and inspections. Wants to hit the ground running. Sure. I said immediately, without a second's hesitation. Let her in. Give them full access. And that's when the next message pinged on my phone. Not from Melanie. Not from Mom. From Mrs. Collier, our sweet, elderly neighbor from down the street. A woman in her 70s who baked banana bread for everyone and always waved to the mailman. Her text was simple, observant. Nathan, thought you should know. Saw some contractors walking around the front yard today taking pictures. Melanie came running out in her robe, yelling about people violating her space. Looked very upset. Seemed like no one told her about the sale or the work starting. I stared at the message, a slow realization dawning. She still thought it was a bluff. Even after the listing, after the offers, after the contractors showed up. Melanie genuinely believed, deep down, that I wouldn't go through with it. That I'd back down at the last minute, overwhelmed by guilt or family pressure. The depth of her delusion was staggering. I pulled up the contact info for the contractor Brianna had forwarded me. I sent a quick, calm text. Heads up. You might want to bring security personnel with you tomorrow. Potential for disturbance from current occupant. Proceed with caution. Sure enough, 2 days later, Brianna called, her voice a mix of exasperation and dark humor. Nathan, you called it. Melanie tried to block them. Parked her car sideways across the driveway, stood on the porch in her pajamas, and started live streaming on Instagram, ranting about corporate invaders stealing her safe space. The contractor called the sheriff. She was escorted off the property. Quite the scene. That night, my mother finally broke. She called from a number I didn't recognize, leaving only a voicemail. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was hollow, defeated, empty. You win, it whispered into the phone. Is that what you wanted? To watch us fall apart? To see your sister humiliated in front of the whole neighborhood? I hope it was worth it. I listened to it once. Then I saved it. Not out of vindication, but as a reminder. And for the first time in my entire life, listening to that broken voice, I felt no guilt. None. Because I hadn't destroyed anything. I hadn't orchestrated their downfall. I had simply stopped. I stopped saving them. I stopped holding them up. I stopped playing the role they had written for me decades ago. The dependable son. The human wallet. The silent fixer. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I wondered if they were finally starting to understand. That this wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't spite. This was me, finally, stepping off the stage of their dysfunctional play. But even as the closing date drew near, even as contractors marked walls for demolition and measured spaces for new student bedrooms, a part of me knew. They weren't done. There was one last, desperate act coming. Something messy. Something bold. Something born of pure panic. And I was right. Just 3 days before we were supposed to close, an email landed in my inbox. From the title company. The subject line screamed, "Urgent, claim of ownership filed." My heart stuttered. I opened it with a sense of grim inevitability. The words were formal, cold. "Dear Mr. Halden, please be advised we have received notice of a formal claim of ownership on the property currently under contract. The claim has been filed by Ms. Melanie Halden. Due to the nature of this claim, the sale process must be paused immediately until the claim is thoroughly reviewed and resolved. We will be contacting the county clerk's office and the buyer to inform them of this delay. A formal response from you or your legal representative is required within 48 hours." I just stared at the screen. Melanie. She'd filed a fraudulent claim, asserting she owned the house. It shouldn't have shocked me. After everything, it really shouldn't have. But somehow, she still managed to find a new way to scrape the bottom of the entitlement barrel and then start digging. The sheer, brazen illegality of it took my breath away. I called Brianna instantly. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight. "Yeah," she sighed. "I just saw the alert from the title company. I've never actually had this happen before. She doesn't even own it." I exclaimed, pacing my living room floor, the frustration bubbling up. "Her name isn't on the deed. It's still under Mom's name. I've been paying the taxes for 3 years. She's literally just a squatter with good lighting and an attitude." "I know, Nathan, I know," Brianna said, trying to sound calm. "But legally, they have to follow the process. The claim has to be addressed, investigated, even if it's completely baseless. It gums up the works. How long?" I demanded, the stress tightening my chest. "How long will this take?" "Weeks," she estimated. Maybe longer if Melanie decides to fight it. Hire some ambulance-chasing lawyer. Could drag it out. Weeks. My jaw clenched. Melanie wasn't trying to win. She knew she had no case. She was trying to stall. To cause maximum chaos. To blow up the sale, scare off the buyer, buy herself just enough time to rally sympathy online, spin some elaborate victim story on TikTok about her evil brother and the corrupt system. I could see it playing out. I'd seen her tactics before, but luckily, I wasn't the only one who'd finally had enough. That night, I picked up my phone. I didn't call out of guilt. Not to beg. I called my mother because I knew, deep down, the one person Melanie might actually listen to, if only out of sheer, terrified desperation, was the woman who used to control her with a single sentence and a raised eyebrow. The architect of this golden child dynamic. She didn't pick up. So, I left a message. My voice was calm, cold, utterly devoid of emotion. Just facts. Mom, listen carefully. You can fix this, or you can go down with her. But you don't get to block me, exile me, and then expect me to stay silent while she commits fraud. Melanie has until Friday, 2 days, to formally withdraw that false ownership claim with the title company. If that claim isn't withdrawn by close of business Friday, I will file a civil suit against her for fraudulent claim and damages related to the vandalism. And I will win. The police report, the contractor photos, the tax records, it's all there. Choose. I hung up. No yelling. No drama. Just the cold, hard consequences laid bare. The next morning, another email from the title company. The subject line was shorter this time. Claim withdrawn. Sale resumes. I didn't need to call Brianna. I didn't need to ask what happened. I could picture it perfectly. My mother, finally cornered, realizing that protecting Melanie's delusions might leave her homeless too. Realizing she couldn't charm or guilt her way out of legal consequences. That she'd backed the wrong horse, and the stable was burning down. Storming into Melanie's room, the phone ripped from her hand, the furious, terrified whispers. The frantic call to the title company to retract the lie before the hammer fell. The closing date got pushed back a week due to the paperwork snarl. But the buyer? She didn't flinch. In fact, Brianna told me she upped her deposit, reaffirming her commitment. Apparently, she'd seen the video online of Melanie's failed stand against the inspectors and found it darkly amusing. Said it would make a fantastic before story for her rental property website, the entitled Tenant versus Progress. The irony kept giving. And then, it was done. Signed. Sealed. The keys handed over. Funds transferred. $137,000 landed in my bank account. The house was gone. Truly gone. I sat in my quiet apartment that night. No music. No celebratory drink. Just me, the glow of my laptop screen showing the confirmation email, and a half-finished soda gone warm and flat. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Victorious. Vindicated. Instead, I felt quiet. Profoundly quiet. Like I'd finally put down a massive, invisible weight I'd been carrying since I was a teenager. It wasn't just the house. It was the crushing burden of their expectations, their manipulations, the endless guilt trips. The unspoken contract that had bound me. You will clean up our messes because that's what good sons do. You will sacrifice because we are your family. The bottomless emotional tab I'd been paying since I got my first part-time job. Gone. Paid in full, with interest. I braced myself for the fallout. The screaming voicemails. The desperate doorstep confrontations. The social media smear campaign. But it never came. Silence. Melanie unfollowed me on every platform. She posted one final, dramatic Instagram reel, a blurry, tearful rant about how the system fails women every day, and then vanished from my online world. Radio silence. A week later, a single text arrived from my mother. Just 11 words. You made your choice. I hope it keeps you warm at night. I stared at those words for a long time. The old guilt tried to stir, a phantom limb. But it couldn't take root. Not anymore. Then I typed my reply, simple and true. It will. Central heating works great in my new place. Because yes, I used part of the money. Not for revenge, but for peace. I bought a condo. Nothing flashy. Nothing huge. Just a clean, quiet, modern one-bedroom in a good neighborhood. My own space. No roommates. No drama echoing through thin walls. No unpaid debts or hidden resentments lurking in the corners. Mine. The rest of the money? It went straight into a high-yield savings account, a buffer against the world. And a significant chunk went into a college fund for my goddaughter. She's the daughter of my best friend, a bright little kid who once drew me a picture and declared I was her favorite uncle simply because, as she put it, you listen, Uncle Nate. That simple statement hit me harder than any of Melanie's rants or Mom's guilt trips. That was it. That's all I had ever truly wanted. Not to win, not to gloat, not mountains of money. Just to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, valued for who I was, not just for what I could provide. And that respect, that simple kindness, came from people who actually deserved to have me in their lives. A few months later, I bumped into Mrs. Collier at the local coffee shop. She hugged me tight, her eyes kind but searching. "I hope you don't feel bad for what you did, Nathan," she said softly, patting my arm. That girl, she needed a wake-up call. We all saw it. I hugged her back. "I don't feel bad, Mrs. Collier," I told her. And I meant it. Every word. Not one bit. Because sometimes, the hardest part of growing up isn't letting go of the people who hurt you. It's realizing, truly understanding, that they were never really holding on to you in the first place. They were just clinging to the convenience of your grip, the support you offered, the stability you provided. Once you find the courage to finally, truly, let go, that's when you're free. Not waiting for their approval, not hoping they'll change. Just free. For real this time.